Okay, so now we have our piece out of the pickle, and I went in there and cleaned it with the brass brush and Dawn soap. Now I have drawn freehand a little daisy pattern or a little flower pattern in here, and it's very crude and very rough, and it's nothing that I want to follow perfectly. It's just kind of a sample to give me an idea. So first of all, what we want is we want to do 2 rings, half rings. So I'm going to take my 18 gauge wire, and I'm going to take my bail pliers. So I'm going to form the small half ring with my round nose pliers. I'm going to snip it with my cutters. I want to make sure that it's curved well, and you can see here on this one that one end is flatter than the other. So I'm going to try that again. I know what the problem is. So there I have a nice round circle. So now I'm going to cut that apart. And I think that'll work. Now I do want to verify that my ends are flush. So I'm going to take my file Actually, I have a sanding disc in my flex shaft, so I'm just going to set this there and just very gently sand the ends. That is a very coarse sandpaper, so it took those ends off very well. I want them to sit flush up against that square wire. Now, on the second one, I'm going to take my bail pliers on the larger end and do the same. You'll need to work with this until it fits the way that you want it to. This one needs to be a little bit rounder. I'm going to use my steel block there to push the ends on around. And I think that'll work. I'm going to sand those ends flush. I think I may pinch them in just a little bit more. With my pliers. Metal smithing and jewelry is all about knowing which way to move the metal. If it's not positioned the way you want it, how do you need to push it and bend it to get it the way you want? And now you will see that those curves are pretty reflective of each other. So now I'm going to sand this. Okay. Now, in order to form the petals, you want to start with your main petal first. And I drew that one first, but I'd like that to be my main petal, but I want it, I think, maybe just a smidge longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Sharpie. I'm going to lay this on that line, and then I'm going to mark where I think I want the point. Okay. Then once I have that mark, I'm going to bend my wire at that point. I'm going to take my pliers Now, if you wanted a rounded flower at that end, you could definitely form it more with these pliers. And it's going to give me a rounded enough shape as it is. I do want the petal to be curved on the sides. Just kind of shape it. It's a little bit wider than what I want, so I'm just going to take my pliers, pinch that together. One's a little longer than the other, so I'm just going to snip it flush. And see if that's going to be what I want. And I think that will work nicely. We are going to put decoration granules around the edge, so I don't want to get it too close to the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match this pattern and do 1, 2, 3 more petals just the same. And the way I'm going to match that pattern is I'm just going to lay this out, and kind of the way that I did when I was measuring along the line, I'm going to come here, mark where my petal should be, and it will be a little bit longer. And let's see, I needed 3 more of those. They got longer as they went because I was making a copy of a copy of a copy. But I have 3 more done. I'd rather them be too big than too little because we can obviously trim them down. Now, if this drives you guys crazy because you don't have an exact pattern, you could lay that daisy out on a piece of paper, or that daisy petal out on a piece of paper, and then, you know, try to form your other pieces exactly on top of it. But when you're working with wire, it's different than if I was going to cut that out in sheet. If I was going to cut it out on sheet metal, then I would want a pattern and I would want to lay it out and then saw around it. But this is wire and it's a little bit different. And I think one of the greatest things that you can learn to do as a metalsmith is to form the wire and the sheet with your hands. That's definitely your greatest tool, is your hands. So we're going to work with these petals until we get a pleasing shape. You can use your round pliers to put the little side in, or you can just simply use the pads of your fingers and thumbs. I actually like that petal a little more because it is a little sharper at the top, so I'm going to go ahead and try to pull this one in. Make it a little sharper there. I'm going to lay one on top of the other, and I'm going to mark where I need to trim off the ends. It's good to have extra. You don't know if one end will be shorter than the other once you're through forming. And you can always use your little wire scraps for granulation for another project. So actually this would be great for the half rounds. So I'm going to take my half round pliers and I'm going to kind of pull in the bottom of that petal. I'm going to do the same on this one. I'm going to form the third one. Remember to hold your finger over the ends of the wire so it doesn't go flying off. Just look from time to time to compare. That one's a little bit longer. I think I'll put it in the center portion. Okay. Just wanted to lay that on there and verify I had made my marks correctly. I do think I'm going to go ahead and trim this just a bit. Okay. Now I'm working to get the bottoms of the daisies together. Okay, now I'm going to sand the bottom of each of those with this, and I'm wanting them flush, and I'm going to check when I look at them to make sure they're curved just the way that I want them. But I want them to butt up with that round part very cleanly. Now when you're sanding something like this with a rotary tool and holding it, please remember that you are heating the metal and it could get hot. So if you would rather hold it with a pair of pliers or a tool, that might be more helpful. I usually just stop when I feel it getting warm and let it cool just a second and then hit it again. And you can look at the ends, and when you can tell by the shine or the texture on the ends if they are flush the way that you want them, the way the light reflects off of them. Okay. We're just going to do a little bit of a test fit here. And I am going to want to go over there and anneal these pieces before we fuse them. If you'll remember me telling you how when you anneal, it will expand. The pieces will expand. And they could move, and we just don't want to do that. Now, if you see that they're not quite fitting in there, laying down together, you can pick one up, you can pinch it so that it's narrower and will fit in there better. You want to make sure that they're all touching here. So if they're not touching here, even if they all fit in side by side, then you still haven't got them narrow enough. So I'm going to pinch this one down just a little. And that's much better. I think I've got a little bit of room. I can curve him out just a bit. He looks a little skinny. And you can see where this is a little fiddly and you're going to have to kind of be patient, but you're going to love it when it's done. Now, what we're going to do from here on out is we're going to form half petals, exactly like these petals, but they're going to stop right here. And we're going to place 1, 2, 3, and I think that'll be fine. If it looks a little odd that we don't have something here, we can go ahead and add that. But I think if we just add 1, 2, 3 half petals, I think that'll be more than enough. So I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to take and add some acetone, and I'm going to take the pattern off of the back because it's a little bit hard to kind of see what we have going on. So I'm going to stop the video, I'm going to take care of that, and then we will resume putting the half petals on.